And I'm not exaggerating. Nobody used it. Why? A lot of reasons. In general, the old Riverwalk was awful because it was narrow, it was boring and unattractive like most of my exes, and it was incredibly inconvenient. Every time you walked along a section and you got to a bridge, which you may notice happens all the time. We got a lot of bridges around here. You had to stop, go up a staircase. You can still see some people going up and down there right now. It looks like they're taking wedding pictures. Then you had to cross a busy street and go down a staircase, and your reward for all that work, bridge after bridge, was the same. A narrow, featureless concrete walkway with nothing but a rusty fence. Now it's way better. Every section's wider. Every section's got its own unique design. And most importantly, you now have these bridge underpasses, so you've got a flat path the entire length for 1.25 miles. This is all designed by a Chicago architect named Carol Ross Barney. My favorite section of the Riverwalk is this one you see hundreds of people enjoying right now. It's called the River Theater. This also happens to be the place where the most tragic, deadly event in Chicago history occurred. Go back to one sunny day in July of 1915, there was a giant ship docked right there called the Eastland. They had just boarded about 2,000 passengers for a day trip across the lake when the boat started to wobble and then tipped over in the Chicago River right there. 844 people drowned that day. More women and children died in that disaster than in the Titanic 3 years prior. It is still the third deadliest shipping disaster in all U.S. history, and a bit depressing to talk about on a boat tour. Some of you laughed anyway. Wow. I'm very disappointed in some of you. Tragedy plus time, yes. If you thought that was funny, miss, you'll find this hilarious. 22 whole families died. Well, that ended the laughter. Okay. Some of you were choking back. All right. I like your morbid sense of humor. That's phenomenal. To our right, we have a tan concrete building, number 55 on top. Short building compared to its neighbors. Very interesting structure. This is in a style that you won't see anywhere else on the tour. There were major styles in the 1900s, but there were tons of little styles that you don't see very often. This one is in a style actually called brutalism. Not because it's brutal to look at, but it's actually for the French words for rough concrete, béton brut. That is the distinguishing feature of brutalist buildings. They use rough concrete, and if I know something about people, it's that they love rough concrete. That style was only popular for about 1 year in the late 1960s, typically found in equally depressing places like government buildings, prisons, and former communist Eastern Bloc countries. We'll go from that building to almost the exact opposite of that, an absolutely stunning building. I would put this next building in my top 2 most stunning in Chicago. The only one that gives it a run for its money is the one we saw earlier with the incredibly narrow base. So what am I talking about? Look straight ahead of the boat, then go about 5 degrees to the right. You're looking for a building with a dark green, narrow neck, shiny top. That top shines even on dreary days because what you're looking at is what you might guess, pure 24-karat gold leaf atop what's called the Carbide and Carbon building from 1929. It's an unusual Art Deco tower. Instead of the standard limestone skin, you're looking at dark green glazed terracotta. And for years, tour guides like myself said the same thing about the building. It had to have been designed to look like a champagne bottle that had just been opened. The green color's like the glass. You got gold foil near the top, and if it had just been opened, what might you see? Champagne shooting straight up out the top. Just had to be true, but there was no verification of that until 2 years ago when some documents were found from the architects from 1928 that said, yeah, it actually was inspired by a champagne bottle. Kind of satisfying to know it was true. Even if that weren't true, it'd still be a gorgeous building. If you want to check it out, you can. It's home to a high-end hotel called the Pendry. They just opened up a rooftop bar in 2021 on the first setback. You can see just barely between the 2 buildings. It's on the 24th floor. I've not gone, despite the fact it's been 4 years. It's got to be great. I presume I'll go eventually. Life is short, you got to enjoy it, but I also enjoy money, and that place is very expensive. You can enjoy life more easily with more money, and I would have less of it if I went there. On the other hand, it's gorgeous. So why else haven't I gone there? There's another rooftop that's a 2-minute walk from there that's even better. If you don't know what I'm about to tell you about, pay close attention. The London House above us to the right is a must-go. Above us to the right, there's a narrow glass building with the London House. It also includes the building further ahead to the right from 1923, called the London House. The rooftop up there, been open for about 10 years, was rated by one publication 4 years ago as the 2nd best rooftop bar in the United States, and it's free. You have to go anytime you can go. The bad news is they take reservations. I'm sure at this point in the year they're already booked months in advance. Doesn't matter. They take walk-ins. I've never had an issue walking up there, spending 10 or 15 minutes taking in the view and then leaving. You don't even have to get a drink. If you do want to get a drink, you might think they charge you a ton of money for a beverage just because they got a great view to sell you. You'd be wrong. Last time I checked the menu last fall, cheapest alcoholic beverage up there was an $8 Miller Lite. You cannot even look at a beer at Wrigley Field for that price. That's a steal. You almost can't miss it as well. It's open from 10 a.m. to midnight every day. Go anytime you can go. It's phenomenal. It's also, to point out the obvious, a 5-minute walk from our dock. We'll end the tour right over there. You should go right after the tour's over. It's phenomenal. You'll regret it if you don't go. I'm probably telling you so much about this. Some of you think that I'm going to get a cut if you go. It's just that amazing. You will regret it if you don't go. Opposite corner of the London House, right there across the river to the left, or across the bridge as well, you got a great view of the iconic Tribune Tower. That's the building with the American flag flying at the top. Gorgeous Gothic Revival designs below that. Tribune Tower finished in 1925, sadly no longer owned by the Tribune. It's still called that, but the Tribune sold it, and 3 spots around it that they owned in 2018 for $240 million. Kind of sad, it was gutted, turned into high-end condominiums. Coolest feature of the building was preserved. Walk around the base of the building and you'll see embedded in the facade are over 160 different stones from famous places all around the world. They got pieces of the Taj Mahal, Parthenon, Colosseum, Great Wall, Pyramids, Westminster Abbey. You name it, if it's a famous building, they probably got a piece of it. Tribune reporters used to go around the world to do stories, and then they would just steal pieces of historic structures. That's illegal, you should check it out. Not far away to the right, you got a couple brown brick buildings. Skip them, go to the building just behind the farther of the 2 brown brick structures, and you'll see the best view on the tour you can get of a wavy white building called Aqua. Finished in 2009, it put a Chicago architect on the map. Her name is Jeannie Gang. Jeannie Gang won all sorts of awards for that building's design. Since then, she's done all sorts of projects all around the world and in Chicago, big and small. It's worth noting, only about 6 years ago, she won a contest the city of Chicago held to design a new terminal to be built at O'Hare Airport. Her design went up against big-name architecture firms from around the world. I'm sure there was no corruption involved this time, but her design won the contest, and you might appreciate at least one element of the design at this point in the tour. The design is for a terminal to be built in the shape of the letter Y, not a coincidence. Other things to note about Aqua, it was cool in 2009, not just for the design. It was also unique in Chicago because it was one of only 3 towers in the city at the time to have residences on the 80th floor or higher, and of those 3, it was the only one to have balconies. In other words, for about 10 years, those were the highest balconies in Chicago. If you care, the highest balconies in Chicago today happen to be on Jeannie Gang's most recently completed tower. It's hard to miss it from just about anywhere in Chicago. It's that tall blue glass building ahead to the right. Finished in 2022 as the new 3rd tallest building in Chicago. There's a lot of interesting things to say about it. I always kind of have 2 minds about where to go from here. I guess I'll just go where I normally go. It's called the St. Regis. Basic facts, I mention that because it comes from the name of the hotel that's at the bottom, but the vast majority of the tower is residences. If you're interested in buying a condo, I can tell you a bit about the prices. When the building came on the market a couple years before it was finished, cheapest condos were $1 million. I just checked a few months ago, just for fun's sake, cheapest condos today are cheaper, $850,000. Maybe that's a good deal. The higher floors, of course, are more expensive, and that's for 2 reasons. Number one, of course, you got better views the higher up you are. They're also more expensive the higher you go because from the final setback on upwards, all the floors are whole floor condominiums, 360-degree views. That's especially interesting because as you look up at the top of the tower, you'll see about 10 floors down, there's a big wide open space. It's the 83rd and 84th floors. They were supposed to be home to multi-million-dollar residences until 2020. That was the year they topped out the building and the year they put a model of the tower through wind tunnel tests again, and this time they revealed something disturbing. The highest floors of that tall tower were found to sway so much that people who would be paying millions of dollars to have great views up there would instead spend a lot of their time just staring at and puking into their toilets, and you could do that for a lot less than several $1 million. So they had to change the plans for the building. They got rid of the residences planned for those 2 floors and instead left them as you see them, wide open. There's no glass, no fencing. It's an open space called a blow-through because it does exactly what it sounds like. It allows the wind to blow through and reduces the sway of the tower. That cost the developers millions of dollars and lost residential sales. Also led to a memorable experience for me in the summer of 2020. I'll never forget the day I finished giving a tour and a guy walked up to me who'd been on the boat. He said, "Hey, I work on that building. Do you want to check it out?" I had no idea who this guy was, so I thought back to all the advice my parents gave me about strangers, and I said, yeah, and I followed this complete stranger into the dark abandoned building. He took me up to the 83rd floor, the blow-through floor. As I'm sure you can imagine, the views were amazing. Even more amazing were the views I got later from the roof. It's not even up to the public, and I told you that's the 3rd highest building in Chicago. It's actually got the 2nd highest roof. It was amazing. The only thing above us was the Sears Tower in the clouds. We had a great time. Views were stunning. We held hands. I'll never forget it. All I really learned from that experience was always trust strangers. My parents were totally wrong. Think about all the cool experiences I've missed out on over the years because of that. This is a true story. One day when I was walking to school in 4th grade, a guy pulled up next to me in his car and he said, "Hey, you want to get in my car?" I said no. Think of the cool experiences I could have had. Could have seen his basement. Looking ahead to the left, you'll see a yellow crane appearing right about now. That crane was added to this tower about 6 months ago. The tower that's being built there now is nowhere near as impressive as the original plans for the spot of land. Go way back in time to 2007, and they started building right there the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, 2,000 feet tall, were the plans for the dramatic, twisting, pointed drill bit of a building called the Chicago Spire. They dug a 76-foot deep foundation hole, and then the very next year, 2008, The Great Recession struck, and construction was never finished. All that was there for 17 years, giant hole in the ground. That started to change about a year ago. The land is now owned by a different developer, and they started construction on the first of 2 buildings on that spot that they plan to build. Certainly better than a giant hole in the ground, but that building will be the taller of the 2, nowhere near as impressive, as I mentioned, as the original plans. That one will be about 850 feet tall when it's done. Assuming they're both done, though, they should be a very nice addition to the skyline. They're basically going to look like twins of each other. They're going to be residential towers that will look a lot like giant cascading waterfalls of glass, punctuated by balconies on the way down. They were done by the same guy who did One World Trade Center in New York City, David Childs of the architecture firm Skidmore. Always. And they're everywhere. This is probably as good a time as any on the tour to talk about Daniel Burnham. Daniel Burnham's name I did drop earlier when I talked about the Chicago fire, and I told you he came here after the fire, becoming, I think, the most important resident in Chicago history. What did he do in Chicago? Well, let's start with the architecture. He lived here most of his life, designed a lot of great buildings here. I think his best building's actually in New York City. If you happen to know the Flatiron, he designed that building. It gives you an idea of how good of an architect he was. And that's saying something, because Daniel Burnham's probably least known for doing architecture here, and he did a lot of architecture here. So what else did Daniel Burnham do? He organized Chicago's first World's Fair in 1893. Many people say it's the best World's Fair ever. He wasn't done. After that, he became a world-renowned city planner. In 1909, his plan for Chicago was published. We followed that plan, and it made us into a world-class city by adding a lot of our best amenities. Many of them are around us right now. For example, you may know Chicago does not sell the lakefront, the most valuable land in the city, to the highest bidder. Instead, we